Hi, it's Pete the Bumbling Modeler back again. So this is the sort of final push on the little academy kits I was working on. So I've got the half track and the amphibious jeep. There is the little motorbike to build, but I'll just build that in the background. There's nothing really to see about that. So how I'm thinking about dealing with this, and I've been pondering it, is a little bit of a beach scene, as though this is a landing point somewhere in the Mediterranean, anonymous place, doesn't really matter. Beyond the point where there's been the initial creation of a beachhead, this is just going to be sort of weeks, months afterwards, where they're loading things ashore. And this is why I was a bit cagey about this half track. So in my mind, this is taken out frontline surface because it's a bit old and tired, and just been using on a beach to pull boats ashore or rescue amphibious vehicles that are in difficulty, if that sort of makes sense. So it's going to be not armed, not armoured, and just there to tow things out. And we're going to have this little amphibious jeep in water, stranded. Maybe something's broken, maybe it's leaking, don't know. Crew have bailed out because I haven't got any figures, so it'll have to be without crew. So this will be sitting in water, coming up the beach, and so it's going to be rescued by the half track. And to add a bit of colour, I think I'm going to paint black and yellow stripes across the back of the half track, just to make it stand out a little bit. Otherwise everything's a bit green and sandy coloured. And we'll have some writing down the side that's been put on by the local troops. And that's the sort of feeling. So I've got, I should really organise myself. I've got some transparent resin for for the water. Don't know if you can, hopefully you can read that. I've got some blue and green dye, so it can make a sort of turquoise Mediterranean colour. No idea what I'm doing with it. It could all end up as a gunky mess. And we'll have beach sand, which I've got to pick up from somewhere, some fine silica sand, and just water down there. So the next thing is to sort of lay this out. So I think to add a bit of contrast and height, I've sort of put some pencil lines on this. But we had a sort of concrete-ish road, as you see on many a Greek island. You're on holiday coming down here. I want to put a little wall up here. It's going to be sort of yay high, about half the height of that, the half track. Mainly then I've got something to lean the motorbike against, because I'm going to have the motorbike leant against that with a tarpaulin over it to keep the sun off it. So the half track will be going towards the road. This will be in there. So the road's going to run roughly parallel to the beach, and I'm trying not to get everything at 90 degrees to the board, because I think that looks a bit icky. So we'll have the beach down here that's dry, and then this will be the wet area. Now that might be more than the resin can cope with, so I might adjust this as I go. So in fact, let's adjust it now. That gives enough for the wetted area, so that can sit in there coming out of the water. That way I can get the resin pour a little bit deeper. I'm going to have a couple of oil drums. Probably now I've moved that here and here, and we'll have to make our own oil drums for that. And they'll have a little post coming out. It's probably going to be a bit wider actually. And then when this thing's swimming ashore, it's got a landing point to aim for. Then the half track can be sitting there getting ready to manoeuvre to tow it out. Probably back a bit. So this is going to be a relatively flat area of the beach, and it's going to step down, and I might put a slight ridge here as a natural landing point. So that's all giving me an idea of the layout I need. So to do this, I was going to lose everything I had. Where did I put that? I had some cardboard I put aside for this job, and I can't find the cardboard. We'll be using balsa wood, I guess. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Yeah, I've got some 2mm corrugated card there, and I was just going to layer that up to get the steps on the beach. So we're going to say this back area is relatively flat because it's a roadway. Then it'll step down from that. This one will have a slight slope on it, so I'll probably have 2 at the back, something like that. One down there, so there's a step up to the road, and then multiple layers coming down. So I'm going to cut these out, lay them up, then you can see what I mean. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we're back in, and we've sort of made up the beach section, and all I've done is glued loads of cardboard, and when I ran out of cardboard, balsa wood, and tried to get a natural sort of, I wanted to curve across the bay that way and a slope down there. I don't want this to be absolutely drowned in water, but I do want it to be in water, so that profile is there. Then obviously I build up these sides when I come to do the resin, and the resin will probably lap up in a curve round, try and get it around this level here, and that should, judging by that's I can't see in this light, that's 15mm, and that, so it should give a 6mm depth of resin down there, which comes up halfway up those back wheels, which is probably about right. But we've got this. I will put a layer of plaster over this, which I've got here. I'll do that on camera. This is going to be the roadway across the back here, so I'm not too worried about that. It's going to be plastered from that level down. Then it'll have PVA and sand, and then after that the resin pour. So the first thing I've got to contend with is, if you sort of layout like it's going to be, that's going to come in fairly flat, so I don't have to do too much for that. We can take up all that gap with the plaster, but if this is at the angle we thought we wanted it, I'm going to have to do quite a lot to get this to sit right. So I would say, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to erode the bank around this track here so that sits flatter. I mean, so you can do some of this with the plaster, but you don't do too much with the plaster, because then you end up with a big thick lump of plaster on there. So that, we need a half moon shape out of there. Yeah, that's sitting better already. So let's have a look. Hoping with this camera angle you can see a bit better. So that's going to be all right. If the water comes up to, I don't want this too deep in the water itself, that's the thing. Because I'd have to cast them both in the water at the same time. Well, I can do that though. So a little bit more out of here, I think. I'm drawing that one as a right angle, but obviously you don't want too much. So the back's sitting quite nicely. Just need to erode a bit around here for the front wheel to do its thing, which we can do. That's alright. Both front wheels are on the ground, the tracks are as on the ground as I want them. And it might mean if we have the water level up to around, well, we'll see where it naturally levels out, but that'll be built up a little bit around there. So I've got a feeling both will be part in the water, which is alright. And we're going to have that at an angle there, that's sitting fine. It'll have to be in a bit. Okay. So I think we've got positions for them, and then wall there, it's coming onto the roadway, it should be raised up. Yeah, okay, it kind of works. Try and envisage the level of the water, but worry about that later on. These tracks are going to be in the water because it's going to be coming down this slope, isn't it? So we will have to cast them both into the resin when we do the resin pour. I was hoping to leave that one out. Alright, so the next stage now is balsa warps. Well, I'm not worried about gaps or that, are I? Balsa does warp like mad. So I'll need to seal this in. If it was just a cardboard, I probably would have got away with it, just plastering. But I want to seal that in, partly that and partly so the plaster doesn't get all its moisture sucked out by the wood. So somewhere in my world I've got a can of sanding sealer. If not, it's watery PVA, no, it's sanding sealer. So it's this stuff, modeler, plain people use it really, and it's just a cellulose varnish that will soak into that and seal everything up. So when we put the plaster on it, when draw all the moisture out of it, it stinks to high heaven. So we only coughing and spluttering a lot, but let's get this sealed up quick. So we'll need that, a half decent paintbrush, stroke paintbrush we don't mind destroying. That's probably going to be fine. So all I'm going to do is get this, start slapping it on just to seal all the. Clearly this brush has been used for something mucky because it's putting stains all everything, but this is all going to be memory card. Sorry, there's a timer on that and my camera just went off there. I'm using a different camera to try different angles, so I've gone on to a webcam, 4K webcam, and I want to see how this looks. If it doesn't work, I'm back to the iPhone. But I've had trouble with the iPhone downloading stuff unless you've got an Apple device. It's a real pain, you make it so awkward to download. Right, that's all sealed in, so it should help with the plastering. I'll switch this off, let that dry, then we'll come back out here later on and put the plaster on it. Then you'll see what it looks like when it isn't looking an absolute mess. So back in a minute. Okay, so back again. I think the last video I took didn't have my normal mic on, so the sound quality might be a bit rough. I've mucked about with the camera angle a bit. Hopefully this will show you more what we're doing. I'm trying to get a bit of a side angle, but I'm also making the right pig's ear of it. Anyway, onto this, which is plastering this base to smooth all this in, ready for the next stage. So I've got some normal casting plaster here. I got that from Amazon. It wasn't a great deal of money. I'm not sure why I bought it. I must have done another project with it, so I've just got an old takeaway tub here. This probably isn't the right way to do it, but it works for me. And I'll probably end up doing this in several stages. That's warped out a bit there, it doesn't matter. So normal tap water, blob a load in. Got an artist palette knife here, only because I happen to have an artist palette knife. You can use anything, a steel rule or anything really. I want quite a creamy sort of. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going to chuck this on and see what it looks like from the neck. Can I say that's roughly what I'm looking for? So I don't want too much on this actual flat base, but I do want it to go over that ridge. I want it to be sort of a flat floor that's raising up. The first attempt at this may actually be a bit of a pig's ear. It's all right. So the next thing I need to do, probably see if I can get a glove on quick for this bit and have to work relatively quickly, is get the vehicles I want, and I think the front was going there, wasn't it? So how are we going to have that? That needs to sit somewhere like that, so it's flat on the ground. Let's move that a little bit up. We said the Jeep was going to be something like that. The Jeep always sat flat, but I just want to give that something to bed into, so that probably wandered off screen, so that's just bedded into it as it is. I'm hoping I'll be able to lift that off when it sets, because it's not that sticky, this stuff. Did I come on camera now? So that's all we can do till the plaster sets. So it'll set first and it'll cure. To be honest, I could almost leave them in and put the sand around them, particularly the half track, but I'll try and lift it out later on. Then we can build up a bit of sand around it, but it's sitting, there's nothing really offensive like a wheel in the air when you look at it, which is the bit we're trying to avoid. It's got contact, that one might be slightly lifted, but then, you know, it's, when we put the sand on it, we can pile it up around that wheel. So I'll smooth out bits as I go. That's the beach scene set prior to getting some sand on it, and hopefully there'll be enough resin to get a decent pour of water over this. Like, tapers way to nothing on this back edge, although on that side, this side's still got a bit of height, which is what I wanted. I'm relatively happy with that. We've got a reasonable gradient. Chip it all out, and that's it until it can. I'll probably paint this as sand colour before I put the sand down, so any gaps won't show through. But we now have a beach, and we have two vehicles sitting relatively flat on the beach, so I'll leave it at that, and I'll be back when we're doing the next stage. Okay, back again just quickly. So the board was basically smoothed off. It's still rough, it's going to have sand over it, so that's going to hide a lot of that. I've given it a coat of primer just to stop all the dust. I'll clear all this later, and I'll get some sand tomorrow when I'm at work, and then we can just cover that board in sand, so the vehicle still fit in. That's not a problem. I'll have to just put a bit of black around the tyre there, it's got a bit messy. Now the other thing quickly before I disappear off to bed is we need a wall across the top here. I've done that on the wrong side, have I? I haven't. So I've got two little bits of balsa wood, glue them together. This we can cut off actually. I've just got a bit of tape there because I'm going to render this wall and I want some of the render to come off. But that's going to sit along there to act as a sort of seawall, and to get the profile to match, all I've done is got a pencil and run it down there, and it naturally drops down where the base drops down, so you scribe it in, carve it away, and that's fine. So what we need to do is put a bit of render on this. I think it's easy to do that when it's still on the stick and then cut down to length later on. So that'll go on there, and I want to put that on before I put the sand, so the sand can fill that gap, which is why I want to get this done tonight. So I've got normal domestic poly filler, which hopefully hasn't gone hard in the tube. It's been a while since I've used it actually. And we're gonna, the filling knife is all cleaned up by the way, the pattern knife. I've just pinged all that stuff off, so let's get some of this out. Let's just squirt a bit. Ooh, hello. A bit watery, needs to mix in the tube a bit with some paper towel. Sorry for that. It's only a bit of rough old backing paper. Let's get this mixed up. So let's just get that. It's a bit of it. They'll probably dry out completely. There's an alcohol base in it, so hopefully we can get a bit squeezed out. Don't need a lot of this. I'm going to put this little cheapy thing out that way as well. Right, so I've just rounded the edges on this, and all I want to do is get this and call it a render, so we can still a little more than grain filling really, but the other thing about this is no matter how smooth you think you get it, it'll have patches in it, which is what we want. I don't want this. This will have a wash on it, and I want that wash to sit in uneven crevices in it. So no matter how good we think we're going to do this, we're not going to. There'll be marks as though it's been a cement render. Right, that is basically, oh, do the nose of it as well, sorry. With that, I don't know if you can see in the light, it's slightly distressed, like it's been roughly put on. That's a bit too distressed, so what we need to do, a bit of moisture on that. But there's sort of wrinkles and lines in it, so when we get a wash on that, it's not going to look too uniform. It's going to look like it's a rough old seawall that's been cemented over the years. So we can always knock it back a bit with a bit of sandpaper. Now that touch of masking tape I put on, I did that for a reason, because I want to do that, rip that off, and then that gap there we'll paint as a sort of brick stone colour as that bit of renders chipped off, and I think we'll try and get a bit deeper with that and just peel other bits off so it goes a bit higher. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, if it's going to focus or it's visible at that angle. So when that's on the wall, you'll see a bit of, we'll put some grooves and a bit of grout in that, paint a red brick colour in there, and it'll look like the render's just chipped away a bit, and it's not going to be wholly realistic, but with all these things, it just probably chip a bit off this corner as well. It just adds a little bit of colour to what would otherwise be just sort of beige and green. So that corner there will have just exposed a little, so that I'm not even going to paint. That'll stay that colour, because that'll dry a sort of pale creamy colour. But these inner bits, yeah, we'll just go in, brush in a little bit of primer, brush in I normally use something like a Tamiya, that's a dark red, the whole red, and then lighten little bits. I might not bother with the brick effect, I might just put that red and then weather it. But anyway, once that's dry, I'm going to glue that on, paint it up the bits we need to paint, glue that on there, and then we'll have this sand going up to it and heaping up on that corner so you don't see any gaps, and then we'll put a concrete roadway in that area. So that's going to be it for today, and I'll be back when we're putting sand on this bed before the water. We've got to then finish the detailed painting and the models that are going in there. So I'll need to make a tarpaulin for this. I was going to use the machine gun mounts to put a hoop in there and drape a tarp over it, as though someone just put one under, so when they're sitting on the beach waiting for something to happen, they're under cover. I'd glue that jerry can on, and I regret it now because this back half I want to do black and yellow diagonal stripes, and I will have the door open. I said I wasn't going to, but I can do that. That's what that bit of masking tape's holding in for. So I'll do all that and then paint that jerry can in later on, because it's just a case of dabbing in a bit of green paint. I'll need to put some rust streaks down here. I was going to write something like surf rescue on the side of it, just as a sort of nod to little private army stuff. I don't know. Nothing major, I'll just brush paint something on that looks a bit graffiti-ish. And then we're going to need to put a bit of matte varnish on those decals, and just generally dust it up a bit when we've got the beach in, so we know. Well, that'll be on the beach. I'll probably do it on the board on the beach actually, but that's the sort of thing. This one is going to stay remarkably unweathered, but I'm going to put a bit of gloss paint so it looks wet when I determine, well, probably do it before I determine the water line. I'll probably have a sort of bow wave so it's glossy here and tailing back. As it's been plunging through the water, but it'll be quite a rough one. Nothing that sciencey, and I say that I'll be seeing there. So that's where we are. Next time you see the bench, it'll be tidied up a lot. It's a tip at the moment, I know. I'll get all this cleared away, and I think the next bit you see, I'll be focusing on getting that half track ready. yeah, get it ready to be stuck down. So that's where we are on that. I'll finish here, and next time I'm back I'll be putting a bit of detail onto the half track to blend it into this base. So let's leave that there, and I'll see you soon. Okay, we're back again. So I've cleared up all the mess. The baseboards had a coat of grey primer to keep the dust down, and my desk is relatively tidy. So the next thing to do is try and make a tarpaulin. I just want to have something that the people operating this half track would have just slung over themselves just as a cover, so when they're sitting out in the sun they're not getting baked to death. So to that end I've used some 0.5 styrene rod. I've just cut a length that loops between those two machine gun mounts. It's not particularly neat, it's certainly not concentric, it's just as though they've got a bit of pipe and bent it and shoved it in as a sort of field mod. And I've got a load of blue paper towel, and I've cut myself off a little section that I'm going to just drape over here. I've got some of this VMS paper shaper. I don't remember using it on paper towels before. I've used it on some things, but I'm not sure about whether it's just going to dissolve that, so this could be a disaster. And because I don't want anything to stick to the half track itself, I've just put some tin foil around there because it's thin and quite mouldable, so it'll protect that. So I think the first experiment is get some of this. I'll do it on a bit of tin foil actually, so I don't make a mess on the bench, it'll just get sticky. And we'll just soak this and drape it over and see what it looks like. But it sort of stiffens up the paper, and you sort of get like a gluey effect. So it almost turns it into a light plastic. What I'm not sure about is how well paper towel will hold together when you drape it. And I could just stick it straight down onto the vehicle. I want to lift it off to drill some holes, so I can put some tie downs in it. But I don't want this particularly neat, I just want it so it's being thrown over the top. I'm not sure I'm going to get the effect I'm looking for. I think this is a bit on the flimsy side. I might have to go to a stiffer paper. Let's see if we can. I want it sort of conform to shape, so I don't want it to be. Actually, no. I'm quite liking that. And if I can't get the paper towel off later on, it's not the end of the world actually. The tin foil, because you'll never see it, and just cut it down. And same with the rod underneath. And probably just going to paint that tarpaulin colour, but I can use this to try and fold the tarp down a little bit. You see what I'm doing now? You can, can't you? And inside this, just pinch it there, just try and get a natural sag inside that. Oops, just knocked the camera there. That's one thing I thought I wouldn't do with this new angle. So okay, it's brilliant, but it's kind of going to give the effect I like. It's not that uniform, it's just dragged over. And if we drill some little holes, am I tilting? Sorry. Drill some little holes here and here, we can tie it to this rack with a bit of thread so it looks like it's tied on. That looks a bit stiff and unnatural there, but if I pinch it, I don't want to move. Oh, now I'm getting some nice creases in that. so that'll collect dust up quite well. It's quite sticky, so that I'm going to get a sort of semi crease there. I can live with that not being ideal. No, it's just gone ideal. I think you need to give this a bit of time to work, and I'm rushing it, but that's got a nice sag on that. You can see that I've got a sag down here, creases in it, and it's starting to drop into that as it's quite a stiff material. I think I'm going to leave it at that now and say that's what I'm doing until that's dried, and that probably take a few hours to dry. But once that has dried, put it there so you can see it, sorry. Once that has dried, probably give it a coat of buff. Lift it off, give it a coat of buff. If the tin foil stuck to it, I'll just trim the tin foil off, because you're not going to see that when it's got a coat of paint over it inside and out. So yeah, that's, if that does set, that's going to give the kind of effect I was looking for as a sort of field mod. So that's that. Hi, I've just done some quick calculations. So an oil drum, whether this is standard, was standard in 1940 or now, but an oil drum is 580 to 600 millimeters diameter. And if you divide that by 72, because if we're on a 72 second scale kit, we're getting about 8mm diameter. And the height is 850 to 890. So it's around 12mm high. Now the nearest dowel I've got is 9.6mm diameter. Sorry, show that on the screen. There's a reason I'm talking about dowel, but anyway, we're going to have our oil drum at 9.6 then. So we multiply that by pi, we'll get the circumference, which is 30mm. So if we get a strip of this copper 30mm wide and 12mm high, we can roll it round that bit of dowel, solder up the edges, and end up with an approximate size and shape of the oil drum. So I'm just going to switch this off, bring the brightness back up a bit because that is a bit too dark, and then we'll look at making a drum. Okay, so I've just cut an extra, I've made enough for 2 drums and an extra, and I'm just squeezing this round the mandrel, and that 30 is slightly too tight. I'd rather a little bit baggy than that. It's going to have to be soldered together, so it's not the end of the world. I'll make the other one slightly bigger, but we're sort of getting there or thereabouts, and that should work. So I've just got to cut these two to a slightly longer length. This dowel is tapered, so I'll make a little mark on this end, so I know it's this end I'm using, and I will have to anneal the copper, which you'll see me do in a second. So I'll just get these cut, then we'll go on to the annealing. Okay, I'll show you on a dummy bit actually, but to anneal it, all you need to do is heat it up, and then where this has got a spring, it loses that. So get a fag lighter, cigarette lighter, depending on where you're from. Heat up till you see that bloom of colour, and then just let it cool in air. Then you'll find that'll be really, really soft and easy to deal with. It'll cool. Sorry, a bit of an interruption there. So we know we can solder that up to make our little oil drum, but we need the ridges that go along it as well. So that'll be the next job. I'll make a little tool to do that, and then I'll come back and show you how you do it, and that's when the annealing is really important. So back in a second. Okay, it's on to the next phase of oil drum making. I've finished that one off camera. Just okay, I'll zoom in on that thing when I do it. You get the distinctive ridges you get. I've got a solder joint down the back that doesn't look ideal, but when it's on the diorama, you've got the opportunity to face that wherever you like to sort of hide it. So when you've got your main viewing point, have that rough edge at the back. But these are superior to a plastic one if you're having it as an open oil drum, because I'm going to fill that full of sand with a post on it and have a red and green marker for port and starboard, and have that as a starboard, and have that as a sort of reference when you're coming ashore in your amphibious vehicle. So what I've done is lost my other bit of copper, and found my other bit of copper again. So as before, I've got a soldering iron in the background just keeping warm, by the way, so you hear me yelp, I've just touched it. As before, we're just going to get the lighter and anneal it. So you do that, you see the colour start to bloom. When that's doing it, it's softened really. So you can plunge that in water. Let's do that to show you. That's probably cooled down already. Thicker stuff you'd quench, but this is so flimsy, it cools in air in seconds, so you don't get a great deal out of that. Where's a bit of paint? Now I've made a little jig here, so all that is a bit of old MDF I had lying around, a couple of bits of, I think it's 1mm of aluminium tube. Let me tell you. Yeah, it's 1mm aluminium tube. So we've got that. We've spaced them roughly away from the edge. We put our long side up against there. Now you can buy all these pointy cotton buds from various model manufacturers, but to be honest, if you go on eBay and look at people who sell artificial nails, you can get thousands of them for a fraction of the price of what you pay for a couple of hundred in model shops. I don't know why, but it's just the way it is. But we get our cotton bud and just start to rub the sheet down, so we start to get those distinctive oil drum ridges. I'll try and move a bit more on camera, sorry. They're going to be a bit overpronounced at first, but that's alright because they get squashed and squished when you're trying to roll this on around your bit of dowel, as you can see on that other one. But you do end up with a ridge, something akin to what you get on a proper oil drum, so it is quite a... And of course the advantage of these ones is you can dent them, you can put holes in them, anything you like, whereas the plastic ones, they're very, very uniform and very, very sort of rigid, and if you buy dented ones, all the dents are the same. So if you look at that now, we've got that ridged profile that you associate with an oil drum. Let's just give it a bit more. The tighter you can get into the dowels, the better. You might be able to get away with it using a bit of a cocktail stick. I didn't on the other one, but cocktail stick, coffee stirrer, just to really tighten it up. And when these are done on diorama, I'll be painting them white, and that centre bit I'll paint green for the port, red for the starboard, and just stick them on the base that way with the pole sticking at the top with the same markings, just as a... Again, everything I'm doing is to try and add a bit of colour to the overall finish. So I need my tweezers, which are here, and because we've bent and curved that round a little bit, we will work hard on it. So what we'll do is just go back in again, and just re-soften the... That one didn't cool as quickly. Just re-soften it so it bends more easily. I'm going to get our bit of dowel, which I've got here. should just dropped there. That's the end of the cross on it, which we know is closer to the thing. We'll just start to gently roll this. It's going to be a lot stiffer than it was before because you've got those ridges in, which is what the ridges are for in reality. So, and that's when you start to lose some of those ridges, so it doesn't matter that more overly dramatic, because you're going to have to start manipulating this to make it fit. And then what I'm doing, so I'm going to be playing with heat. The fact that's a bit creased on one side doesn't matter. That's a natural dent at the top. We'll live with that. So I mean, it's, you won't get two of these the same, which is quite nice. Right. I want to hold that so I don't burn my fingers, basically. So no way do I want to touch that copper at any point. I've got this DC Concept flux, and I'm using a low melting point solder. It's about 100 degrees, I think. My soldering iron's a lot hotter than that, but it just flashes off quick. So line all that up as best you can. Get some flux down there, get your soldering iron, and that will clean it chemically. And then I'll probably make a mess. I've done this all the time off camera and it's not a problem. Watch this go wrong now. If I line it all up with a little squeeze, by necessity a lot of this is going to have to be off camera. Oops, it hasn't quite got it. Told you when I did it with you watching it wouldn't work. See if I can do it with the tweezers on this one. I used the wood last time just because it was I had to hold the ends together. Where's my tweezers gone? Oh, there they are. Might be able to just grip it with the tweezers to get it to work in this instance. If it doesn't, I might do this off cam actually, but you get the idea of what we're trying to do. Oops. Yeah, it's got it. So this one's a bit dented on the top, which I quite like. That solder joint's got it. If you're using photo etch, by the way, I'd recommend soldering rather than super glue. It's just more forgiving, but you've got a few dents and nicks out there. That back, we can, if it looks too messy, there's a little lump of solder there. We can clean that up if we feel that way inclined, and we probably do, because that's going to be the top, because I like all those dents. So all we need to do is get a needle file. It's ever so soft, and then we just, not taking all the solder out of the joint, we're just getting rid of that little ridge. There you go, you've got two oil drums that aren't quite identical. They're a bit dented and battered. The one I did off cam is probably a bit better than the other one. That's probably the pressure of doing it on camera, but they're there, and they will end up, where's my board, sitting on my knee, sitting somewhere like that and that, to indicate the safe landing points on the beach. That's how I've made the little oil drums for it. So I'm going to switch off now, I'm going to have a bit of lunch, and hopefully the old half track will start to dry off a bit so we can see what we've got there on the... Okay, so the base has been started, so we saw the plaster go down, we fitted the models to it. I've primed it and painted it a sort of beige sandy colour, and then I've put down the first bit of sand in the area which I'm thinking is going to be underwater. I don't know if you can see it's got some sort of ripples in there. Now that's not intentional. What it was I had started off with this ballast freeze, but don't worry about that, don't waste your money on that, I'll show you something else. So I laid the sand out and dropped it on with a pipette which I've got kicking around somewhere. Standard pipette like that, dropping it on. And where that drops you get little round craters, so you have to sort of dab it out with your hands. But I quite like the ripples there, and that's going to be underwater. Hopefully I've got enough water, that is, but it's still not ideal. And as for the Jeep, I just put that on the ballast freeze when it's wet, and that's strong enough to pick up the board by, so it glues everything on. The half track's going on a bit later on. This didn't need any additional weathering. I'm just going to put a bit of gloss varnish where the water's been on that to show a wet mark, so I can get away with that. But to try, well, first of all, ballast freeze, I said it was a waste of time. So what I ended up doing, or not waste of time, waste of money, I've got some standard sort of general purpose wood glue, PVA stuff. While I'm doing, put a dollop of that in an old pill jar, you can wash it out later on. Actually, this half was with the ballast freeze, and this half was with my PVA mix, and this half looks a little bit darker, so I'm happier with my homemade concoction. And what I've done is got some Vallejo airbrush thinners to dilute this. I tried using IPA alcohol and it just turns into a sort of plasticky gloop, so that doesn't necessarily work, but this seems to work okay to thin it down into a watery so there must be something in that. That makes the PVA dilute where alcohol doesn't have it. There's probably some sort of soaps in there that act as a lubricant, I would guess. And what I'm going to do to smooth out some of these ridges is I've got a cheap strainer probably from Asda, and I'm going to, instead of putting the sand down and putting the ballast fix on, I'm going to put the ballast fix into, let's say, this area here, so it's wetted out, and then try and sprinkle that on with a sieve and see if it can smooth out some of these ridges, because they're a bit over the top, some of them. So I just want to get rid of some of that. It won't be perfect. So this is just going on like water, so it's quite easy to deal with. Really wet it out, I would guess. I mean, this is, you see me experiment live, I've got no idea what I'm doing. I'm the first one to admit that with this sort of thing as well. Just wet that. Particularly around that area where it's a bit blurred. And I get me sand. And just rain it onto the board. Oh, that some of that has immediately soaked up the ballast free, so that is working. So I think when I come to the top, that's what I'll be doing, is painting. I'm just sprinkling it on so it you get quite smooth, because under the surface of the water you are going to get ripples on the surface. You're probably not, so it might not work, but we'll try a few things to get it sorted out. So I'm going to leave that for a good few hours till the PVA mix dries, and I'll tip it off and see if we need to recoat it. And I would imagine it's going to be 2 or 3 coats to build up the texture we want, and then once the water's in, I might need to do a little bit of touch up around the edges. But yeah, I'm going back to this stuff. This does work really well, and it's ready mixed and it's ready to go, and you just drip a bit on, it wicks in with the capillary action. But a bottle of that is probably the same price as a bottle of that. That'll go a lot further. PVA is peanuts from a craft shop. It's only just normal white wood glue, so you can make a lot more of that with that and PVA, and it works equally as well. So if you're only ever going to use it once every blue moon, then the pre-bought option is brilliant, and I've used that quite a bit. I've done a few little models with sand on it, and that has worked particularly well. But then looking at this and that's rock solid. That's, I don't know, it might be a bit soft because of what we've done now. My PVA mix seems to be a lot more firm than the ballast free mix, so there's no right or wrong. That was just the way I've done it. So I'm going to stop waffling now. I'm going to go enjoy the sun, because we've got a nice sunny weekend. This evening it should be dry enough to tip it upside down and get the excess sand off this, and we'll see what it looks like. And once we've got the sand on it, really then it's building up the sides and getting ready to pour the resin, because anything above the resin line I can do later on. And I want to get the resin on sooner rather than later, partly because I've never done it before and it's quite exciting, and also I want to give it a lot of time to cure, because I believe that's one of the things you need to do with it. So yeah, we'll leave it there and I'll be back and show you what we've ended up with. I'm not sure this, I like this camera for downloading, but I'm not sure it picks up the textures particularly well. But you can sort of see you've got sandy textures with ripples hopefully on that. Okay, back again, and the sand is sticking down a lot flatter, so that ripply bit I quite like for what will be underwater when you come to the beach. We're getting that to set. It just needs that little bit longer, but it's doing what I wanted to do, so that's okay. While I was waiting, I sprayed the cross hatching on the back of the half track, and it would say it's just anything to sort of bring a bit of colour to it. The paint's quite fresh, but in a minute I'll peel off the bits of mascot I've got in there, so it should have some natural chips in it. And all it was cutting strips of masking tape, stick it on, and then spraying. It was that black green, which is very close to the green there anyway. Probably could have got away with just having the yellow stripes, but it hasn't bled, which is quite good. But what I did is, once the strips were on, I didn't push them down too firmly, but I had the airbrush a fair distance away with quite a dry mix of paint in it, and just went perpendicular. I didn't have the airbrush at an angle at all, so it didn't want to creep underneath. It was almost drying as it hit the model and just splurging onto that. Ooh, hello. Right, that was me panicking. I thought I'll just peel the rubber off that hook and actually peel the hook off the whole bit. So that's disaster by and large averted. But what I will do, actually no, I will put that on the white wall so you can see it, and we'll get the bits of mascot off here so I don't knock it while I'm doing it. So there's some on the bottom of the door. And that effect looks a bit stark now, but once it's got a bit dusting, it'll blend in quite nicely. And I think I put some around the hinges and the if I did, it's decided those bits coming off now. Ow, ow, ow. So I didn't use a lot, I just wanted to put a bit of wear and tear on it. So that's all that peeled off. There will be a big old dusty wash going on this later on. And that jerry can I didn't want to paint again, I daubed that in the stuff. Yeah, I think that's worked out quite nicely. Will it focus? So the only thing I can't forget to do is glue that little hook back in the back. The bit's overspray, so I'm not worried about it. It was meant to be like a field mod, so it wouldn't be properly masked or anything. It's just guys with a paintbrush. Right, so that's back and intact. Now while all that's doing, I was just going to start to give this brick wall a bit of character. So I've got some Vallejo light grey there, it's the water-based stuff. I'm going to bung in. I'm going to start with the light grey. I think I might need to go a bit darker, but I'll start with the light one. It's easier to go darker than to lighten it up again. And this is basically just so that wool isn't as stark and white. Is that too? Probably a bit more watery than that actually. So that wall isn't as stark and white, and also blend brickwork in with the same grime. So you just want to really sort of wet mix it. You don't want anything fancy. Go over the whole thing and it should catch in the texture that's on the backside. I'm not as worried about because this isn't going to be the main aspect of the model. This is I'm not being shy about whopping it on. I just want it on there and I want it everything coated. It's like I did with that water-based wash on the other model. I wanted it, if you leave one clean bit it looks wrong. So we're going to put that upright and it'll dry like that and it'll naturally run down, and that should give quite a pleasing effect. It's already started to stain the brickwork as well, which is good. That's what we want. So it all matches in, 'cause it's, although they're a different stage of their life, as in the render's chipped off when it's older than the brickwork underneath. So the bricks would have had less weathering and still have the same grimy greyness. And I might go over that later on with a slightly darker wash in spots and just drag it down. But for what we're doing for now, that's that done. And I think that's what I've got that out. Let's start the weathering on this canvas. Don't want to do too much, just want to get it to start soaking. So that's sort of toned down the buffness of it, and it's made it a little bit more patchy than it was. That's what we're looking for. We weren't looking for perfection. We just want to, we don't want it really even, and then I'll probably use the same grey to dry brush over the top to blend that in, so things like that gun ring stand out on the hoop at the back. But that's cool. That's the half track's getting there. It needs some bits of rust and things on it, but basically done. So I'm hindered slightly now with drying times for the bed. I'll put a bit more sand in places on that tonight. And I can't really do a great deal more. The half track needs a little bit of detail painting on it. And I need to fade the top surface a bit and put a bit of satin varnish over the decals, but nothing much. I'm going to put white cross-nut jerry can to show its water. Getting there, but we're in a bit of a lull at the moment, until such point as we get the rest of the sand on the base and we try and get the water in. So I'm going to leave that there and see you again. Okay, we're back again with the sort of final stage of this base until I attempt the water. So since you've been gone, I've assembled the little Harley Davidson, and I've put it with the stand up, and I'm just going to spray it simply and lean it against the wall there when it's done, as though that's something that the local troops have found or commandeered and they use it to nip into town, or just as a little private commuter bike. I'll have it set back so you can still see the, you can't with that camera, you still see the brickwork in that wall. I quite like that feature. The walls had a light grey wash. It might have a slightly darker wash just to bring more out, but it's a white wall, so what can you say? I've carried on putting sand on the bed. That's all done with the homemade ballast fix, and as you can see, there's bits still coming off, but not much. I'll have to have a proper hoover up when I finish this model, actually. Gap underneath there I'm not worried about, because the half track sits in that, so you never see underneath it. The little oil drums are in place, looking suitably battered. It was white primer, then I just painted green on the starboard, red on the port. Have I got that the long way around? Probably have, haven't I? I'll think about it. I might have to snap them off. But again, they've just been filled with sand and it's been dripped with that ballast fix. I was going to have posts sticking out of it, but that's going a bit too far. I'm sure I've got that the wrong way around. I shall check. I'll be able to snap them out and reseal them on. That's not a problem if I have. And I'll put a few rust streaks. There's things like the paint around here, because it's still a bit wet when I put it on, and it got a bit of the ballast fix. So I'll just paint a bit of rusty colour in there and put a rust streak down it, so it's been a bit beaten up and dented. I must have used two different sands actually. This one's a lot finer, but hopefully that'll be underwater. And I've put a patch of seaweed out of this static grass and stone mix I bought years ago from Amazon. So it's just because everything's going on this side, so when there's water it'll be like a blue blob. I just wanted something there to try and balance it out a bit, and that may or may not work. And this transparent gel's finally arrived, which you use on top of your static water to make ripples. So, ooh, knocking everything over. I was playing about on this bit of perspex, so you can see this sort of effect you get, hopefully. Maybe not. But that was stippled on with a brush, and that was blown around with an airbrush. But it just gives that ripple surface you get on top of water. So that'll be, once I've got the water in and it's set, we'll be stippling that all over it. So that's where we are, really. I need to do a bit of detail painting on the half track before I glue it to the bed. I'm painting the cable on that drum, putting some rust streaks and rain streaks down the side. I've glued the back door partly open when I took the tape off, because it fully shut looked nice, fully open you didn't see the striping, so that gives you the best of both worlds. It's quite fragile, but it's on there. And I'll need to get a length of cord between that tow hook and the post on the front of that, as though it's being towed out. But really, once I get the detail painting and that bit of cord attached to this, I can glue it to the base and let that go off. And then we'll end it on that for now, and I'll do the pouring of the water and the concrete road and the final photos on part 2 of this, because otherwise it'll be far too long. So I'm going to switch off for now, check I've got the colours of the barrels right, which I suspect I haven't, and swap them around, probably causing countless damage, and I'll do it offline because of the swearing. Do the detail painting this, get this fixed on, and then I can't really do anything until various glues have set. Okay, I did have the barrels the right way around. I just checked and everything's fine. So little motorbike's had its first coat of the olive green. I'll paint the tyres a sort of German grey, and the seats are German grey, and the engine, looking at some of them, is black, so I'll go for a darkish sort of colour there, but not black, and that's all I'll do with that. I'm really impressed with the detail on that. It's a really nice little thing. Ideally it should have a serial number across there, but I've thrown away the remainder of the decals that would have had a spare serial number on it, because I had to tidy up, but it doesn't really matter for what we're doing. It'll just be a bike leaning in the corner. It's not the feature of the diorama, it's just a thing. So I have to paint chip the half track now. So what I've done is mixed up some of the original olive drab and yellow green, and I made this watery colour, and into that I put a few drops of this flowing Hatza. Tamiya acrylics tend to dry really quickly, and that just retards them a little bit, not much, but enough that you can use them. And all I'm going to do is sort of pick selected areas on here that stick out, like the edges of, on camera, yeah, the edges of wheel arches where they get chips and scratches that might need a bit more lightening. Actually, that might be a bit dark. See when it dries. Around this step here. Tops of these rails. I don't want it to be too obvious, I just want it to. Round door openings. This one. Okay, I'll probably do this sort of little light patches and say we'll make it darker and put some rust streaks in, and that should give us some sort of nice effect. What we're trying to do is make it look older than the vehicle it's in the water, if I'm honest. That's that. A bit more on the front bumper, that'll get heavily abused. And while we've got a lightish colour, it's approximating a sort of fawn colour, we can just do that to painting the cable drum. Don't think there's much more needs doing on that until that. So what we'll do, we'll let it dry, we'll put in those darker bits inside some of the chips, but not all. Then I'll give it a light coat of satin varnish, then we can put some rust streaks down the side and watery streaks, as though it's been out in all weathers. Then it'll be a case of gluing it down and then editing this and then doing the water. I want to get a bit of a wash over that tarpaulin as well to see what that looks like, because I might have to respray that if it goes horribly wrong. So I'm using this Abteilung Starship fill, which seems to be, well, I'm one of the ones, everyone seems to have jumped on the bandwagon with that one, saying it's the best colour ever. I don't know if it is or isn't, but because everyone else is using it, I've fallen into the trap. Bit of thinners on that so we make a really watery wash. Small flat brush. That one's a bit ugh, but it'll do because we're only putting a wash on with it. So what I want this to do is look like it's just got dirt and grime on it. It doesn't necessarily have to match with a half track, because it could be a tarpaulin someone's found somewhere else, not necessarily part of the half track when it started life, but that just cover the lot. That'll give it a bit of texture and egginess, griminess. And hopefully it'll highlight some of the creases. What I'll do when that's dried off is lightly dry brush it with the dust colour, then it should show all the creases up quite nicely. So that's all I needed to do with that, really. You use very little of these oil washes, and most of them end up just being wiped away on a bit of paper towel like that. So I don't think I'll need the oils till this afternoon, because I've got to put on a satin coat over this after I've done some more inside those paint chips. So they're starting, now they're drying, they're starting to show out. We'll just try and see if it's dry enough to get away with what I was going to do. Because I want to do this in a bit of a rush. Now that pen is probably a bit too much for what I'm trying to do, but I can always take some of it onto my paintbrush, get my head magnifier on, and you pick areas with a white bit like that. Is that on camera? I'll zoom in, and just in the centre of that, probably need a bit more of the pen. Let's do my normal bit of messy. I need a puddle of the paint, really. But you just want to paint the centre of those and still leave a bit of a white halo so it looks like the paint started off. These ones aren't very good for making puddles of paint, as it turns out. Some of the cheaper ones you can just pump them and they are. So just in the centre of that, there, I'll put that dark sort of chocolatey colour. I think it might be lifting from underneath, but it just, you've got a little white halo around it. If you look at the way paint chips, it doesn't go right through. There's you sort of chip off lighter layers, then go through to a darker bit. So that gives, oh yeah, okay, might be a bit fingerprinty there, but we'll get away with that. Again, we can incorporate that into a paint run this because I'm rushing a little bit. So in places like this, and that dark patch is where we painted out the white star originally, if you remember. Might have to go a bit lighter with that cable drum as well. So you don't want to go, not every chip's going to go as deep either, so you don't want to go through over the top. But areas you just want to touch into that. I think realistically, if you look around the front of here, some of these would be deeper, but it just stops it looking as two-dimensional, if that makes sense. might be able to get away with this. Let's just try with the tip of this, because that's faffing. Everything I want to do is avoid faffing about in it. Yeah. Some of them we can get away with it anyway. But that's the sort of little chips and dings we're looking at all over this. I mean, major reason for doing this, I just want it to look different to the probably can't see them off camera, sorry. I just want it to look different to the little Jeep. Either way, so I'll be back in a minute to round this off. Right, back again, and this really will be the final push before the watering stage. This white paper towel seems to be mucking about with the white balance on the camera, so what I'll do is I'll show you what I've done, then move it to one side off the screen, then you'll know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it, if that makes sense. So just got a blob of yellow, blue and dust coloured oil paint on that, and I've put that on that so the oils start to draw out, so it dries quicker. We will be using them, but I'll just put them out of the way so the camera has an easier time. So to start off, I've just given this a little bit of a dry brush with the dust colour, and continue to do so on all the sort of top areas so they stand out a little bit around these grills in the back. I'm going to fade the sides a little bit differently, but I'll just start to drag it down a little bit just to give it that sort of dusty faded sort of hue. So that's ready for the next phase, or the final phase really. Oil drums, I keep on forgetting I've got the camera angle differently. If you have a look at that, ooh, I've sort of, you can't see that one, is it? It's a little bit too close. I've sort of rusted them up by dabbing on this chipping colour in selective areas around the top, then going over with the rust coloured oil paint and just dabbing that on and streaking it down. And when I'm happy with the streaks I've got on it, it might show better. You can't really see the red one, but you can see it quite well on the green one, I think. Bits of paper and crap everywhere, sorry. Put that on the road. Once I've got it where I like it with that, I've got a rust coloured pigment somewhere here. I've had this for years, don't ask me where I got it from. CMK light rust, and I've just dabbed that on that's an accent for the half track, as a powder on there, and dragged it down so you're getting that rusty streaky effect that's running into the sand. And I don't think that's unnatural that you get the sand stained. If it doesn't move, it's going to be stained with the rust because they're not going anywhere. So that's highlighted the top of the tarpaulin a bit more and made it look well dusty. It's faded and washed out the paint on the upper surface of that. Now the next thing I want to do is just get random dots a bit more than that. Of blue. Yellow. This isn't working quite as well as I want because I'm on camera, so it never does. You only need to be really small dots, just little flecks of blue and yellow and dust. Put on blue on. And I don't know why it works when you're fading things, but it does. I think it's when you get an oxide layer, it's not always going to be rust or faded, it's going to be multiple colours. So put some dust in that, probably more dust than anything else. What we're going to do in a minute is get a flat brush that's soaked in thinners and wipe all of that off in a downwards, well in this case downwards and upwards because of the room. I'll do that side, downwards and upwards. Sorry, I'm not going to go over the bonnet because I've faded that already. It's just to give it a bit more on the sides. I'm going to put bits of rust coming off and other streaks once we've got this done. Can't really see it, but there's little dots all over that, and then we're going to get a nice flat brush from there. Okay, that one's a bit crusty, but it'll do. We're just going to make it damp rather than wet. So completely soak it, get a bit of paper towel, get most of that off. And again, normally works, doing it on camera probably won't, but then we're just going to get all those different colours and just start to fade them down, and it'll just give it, as that dries, it'll give it a slightly streaky effect, which, although it's got multiple colours on it, I didn't want to get it on that bit actually, but we're taking almost all away so you get sort of almost an oxidizing look. Yeah, it's a mistake to get it on that top, but we can work with that. A bit more thinners. I should have done it with the top off, but I wanted to get that on when I got it on, so then, you know, it's and just give it some streaks down the side, and then it'll take a second or two to dry off, but when it does, you'll see it's just not, it's all different colours streaking down, but it all blends and looks faded. But around the door, we're just going to go for a straight fade. And it looks like it's all come off, but it hasn't. It'll slightly bluish tinge there's annoying me, but I can go over that with a bit of something later on to get that off. So it's just a sort of hint of rain streaks. So when that's all dry, I'll give it another quick coat of varnish. And once the varnish is on, I'll go over it with a very, very watery wash just to bring out any detail. And then we'll put some rust streaks on it, and then that's finished. So that's as good as done. So I should probably get some of the debris out of the background, take a photo of that now, and I'll use that as a thumbnail. And I'll do the rust streaks and the water on the next one and glue it down at that point, so I can get this edited tonight, and you can see how we've got to this point. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll do the watery thing. Yeah, I'll call this on this because we're not going to do much more that you haven't seen. I think one thing that is notable is that's a lot more weather worn and dusty and streaky than that little Jeep, which was the look I was going for, and you'll see that on a still photo. So we'll leave that there, and the next video with the water, it'll probably be in about a week and a half to 2 weeks, because you've got to let the epoxy set, then put the gel on the top of it, and then I'll have to cast the concrete. So yeah, we'll leave it and see you soon. Thanks for watching this so far, and yeah, it's a different camera angle. If you let me know if that's better for seeing what's going on or worse, I'll be grateful. But if not, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon.